Section 2.2.11, the following frequency histogram represents the IQ scores of a random sample of 7th grade students. IQs are measured to the nearest whole number. The frequency of each class is labeled above each rectangle. We're going to use this histogram to answer parts A through G. So here's the histogram. You want to take a look at it first. Down below here it has the IQ scores. See the numbers going from 60 all the way to 160 down here. You have our frequency, which goes from 0 to 80, and you have these numbers that are listed on top of the rectangles. So we first want to figure out how many students were sampled. The number of students is equal to the sum of the frequencies. So you want to find the sum of all the frequencies, and remember the frequency of each class is labeled above its rectangle. So the sum of the frequencies is adding up all these numbers, and we get a total of 200. So therefore, there were 200 students sampled. Then we need to determine the class width by looking at the histogram. Well, the width of each class is equal to the width of each bar on the histogram. Since the width of each bar is equal to 10, then the class width is 10. So for example, if we look at the width of the first bar, we would take 70 minus 60, which would give us 10. So that tells us what the class width is. Now we need to identify the classes and their frequencies. So we want to determine the range of IQ scores that make up each class. And all classes should have IQ scores that are unique to only that class. And remember that the frequency of each class is shown above its corresponding bar in a histogram. So the list of the classes and their frequencies is shown below. So the first class goes from 60 to 70. Remember, a class width is 60 to 70. So this goes 60, 70, 80, 90, all the way to 150. And then we're stopping here at the first class, which is 69. So from 60 to 69, we have 1. And then from 70 to 79, we have 5. And then from 80 to 89, we have 15. 90 to 99 is 41, and so on. And so therefore, that's how we're identifying the classes and their frequencies from the histogram. Next question states, it says, which class has the highest frequency? So use the histogram to find the tallest bar and determine the class that is associated with the bar to determine a class that has the highest frequency. So notice that the tallest bar is the bar with the frequency of 46. So that's the tallest bar, and so therefore the class that corresponds to this bar goes from 100 to 109, and therefore 100 and 109 is the class with the highest frequency. Part E, it says which class has the lowest frequency. So again, we're going to use the histogram to find the shortest bar, and then determine the class that is associated with the bar to determine the class that has the lowest frequency. So if we take a look at this here, we can see that 1, that's the lowest frequency, which goes from 60 to 69. So therefore, we can see here that the shortest bar is of a frequency of 1. The class corresponds to this bar, which is 60 to 69, and therefore 60 to 69 is the class with the lowest frequency. Okay, now we need to find out what percent of students had an IQ of at least 120. Now to find the percent, first find the number of students that have IQ scores of at least 120 and above. So that means the classes below are going to include IQ scores greater than or equal to 120. So when we look at this, we have 120 to 129. And so the frequency is 33. And then we got 130 to 139, which gives us a frequency of 11. We have 140 to 149, which gives us a frequency of 6. And then 150 to 159, which gives us a frequency of 2. So now that we found those numbers, we have 33, 11, 6, and 2. When we add them together, it gives us 52. Now, all that does is give us the amount of the frequency, but we're asking what is the percent of students that had an IQ of at least 120. So we're going to divide the result by the sum of all the frequencies in the histogram. And so recall that the sum of all the frequencies was found in part A to be 200. So we're going to take 52 and divide it by the sum of all the frequencies and multiply it by 100, which gives us 26%. So therefore, 26% of students had an IQ of at least 120. Okay, the next question is asking us, did any students have an IQ of 169? So remember that the height of each bar in the histogram is the frequency of the corresponding class. Notice that an IQ score of 169 is greater than 160. And then notice that there are no bars greater than an IQ of 160 in the histogram. And that is the height of the bar, or the frequency for any class greater than 160 is 0. So we're going to use this information to decide whether any students have an IQ of 169. And therefore, if we look at the histogram, we do not.